Hey guys, hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to talk about Markdown in today's video, specifically using Markdown to write more expressive README files for your GitHub repositories. I think writing READMEs is a very important part of contributing and maintaining any code that you've written on the internet, because it conveys pretty much everything about your project, what your dependencies are, how you're expected to test the project, potential issues going on with the repository, so on and so forth. And so I think using and learning Markdown is very important because it lets you add a little bit of expressiveness to your READMEs. So I'm going to go over the basics of Markdown syntax, and we're going to start with just how I set up a Markdown file in VS Code. VS Code and most text editors are pretty nice in that they allow you to see how your Markdown file will be rendered. Right now I will be writing in Markdown, but I can't really see how this is going to be rendered, how a user will actually perceive this. And you can do this by double clicking on the file and opening it in preview mode, um, which obviously is how the user actually sees this. I'm sure you'll have all seen Markdown files. And the way I like to do this is I like to drag the preview all the way down, and so I can edit in the top and see how it looks at the bottom. Hello, there. This is what I mean. So let's start with the basics. We're gonna start with headings. Headings are pretty simple. You use hashes and then space and type your text. For heading 1, heading 2 will be 2 hashes. I guess I mean like h2 for in HTML is heading 2. 3 hashes and so on and so forth. Up to 6 hashes corresponding to h1 or from h1 through h6 in HTML. Regular text is just by you just type it like you do in any other text editor. So the boy said hi to the cat is just rendered as is. But you'll notice when I do a regular line break and I type in the next line, the line break does not show in the render. That's because Markdown expects 2 line breaks to have a line break rendered. Next, we'll talk about lists. So you can create a list in Markdown, a bulleted list or a numbered list. Actually, let's talk about bulleted lists first. You can create them using a dash, you can create them using plus, or an asterisk. Asterisks, I would discourage you from using because asterisks are also used for other things in Markdown. So I'm going to use a dash. You can use a dash or a plus. And so you can just, let's pretend we're writing a grocery list. So tomatoes, onions, soup, and yeah, the list is rendered down here. To indent lists and add sublists, I just tab it, or 2 spaces, and it will be rendered under tomatoes. To add numbers now to the lists, you replace this with a number, and let's make it a sublist under onions, 2 spaces, and let's say green onions and pink onions. You'll notice that the 2 was automatically autofilled. Right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is links. And links could be links to files in your project directory, or they could be links to URLs on the internet. Just to keep things simple, I'm going to link some text to a file in my project directory. You'll notice I have this empty test.py file, nothing in there. And I can link some text to the file by saying this is a file and putting the path of the file in regular brackets. The file in this case is test.py. So now you'll notice in the render when I click this as a file, it opens test.py. Awesome. Next, we can insert inline code. Inline code is fairly straightforward. You can just do any insert any code within backticks. So let's say variable equals 1. This is some code, and you'll notice the render highlights the code. What is very cool, I think, is like you can do block code. And so to do block code, you use 3 backticks to open up the block, 3 backticks to close the block. Your first line, I believe, is the name of the framework you're using. So in this case, I'm going to use Python, and I'm going to write some Python code. for I in range 30, print I. And yeah, you'll notice that this was printed as if it was in a Python environment. The first line just tells the renderer what to highlight. It's not actually gonna run any code. Images are similar to links. For images, you start with an exclamation mark, you include some alt text, and then in regular brackets, you include a path to your image. There it is. The cat is really cute. But yeah, next we're going to talk about block quotes. Block quotes are basically quotes in a block, I guess. The visual explanation will be better. But you do it by using a greater than symbol and saying and typing anything. This is a quote, and you'll notice it's rendered in this sort of highlighted area. It works for like any important pieces of information you have. I noticed this cat keeps snapping the render upwards, so I'm going to comment this line out for now. To insert a new line, remember you have to use two return characters. This is a second quote, because if I remove this, they'll end up on the same line. So we need the in-between character. Next, we're going to talk about tables. So tables are interesting because they're not natively supported by Markdown. They're actually a feature of the renderer, and obviously the GitHub renderer allows you to do tables. And so tables are done using the pipe symbol. So let's define some headers. So heading 1 and heading 2. What's important now is to insert a line between our heading row and our columns, and our heading row and our regular table rows, and we do that by inserting 3 dash symbols for each column. And now let's define some rows. There you have it. I guess just looking at this, it would not be very informative, but you can see a table is rendered here. Just remember to insert the line between the heading row and the regular table rows. So the last thing I will talk about is text formatting, and it's fairly basic. To bold your text, simply insert 2 asterisks on either side. You remember I mentioned that asterisks have a different purpose in Markdown. This is the purpose. To italicize your text, insert 1 on either side, and to strike through, you insert this squiggly line, I don't know what it's called, between your text. And that's about it. This should give you a lot of the tools you need to write expressive README files. Of course, learning the art of writing a README is not just Markdown, but Markdown is a great tool to have in your pocket when you need to express certain things in a README file, like lines of code, linking to certain files, linking certain URLs you have, perhaps a documentation website. Lists particularly are very useful for me, nested lists as well. And of course, using headers to divide your README up into different sections is another really useful application. But yeah, I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching.